Hey, welcome back. We got a knife here. I actually needed to pre-unpackage some of this paranoia packaging from this particular maker. Yeah, that's right. This came from SPK. Super exciting. This may be one of the most exciting unboxings I've had all year. I won this in an auction on Instagram. Got to check out, follow Alex Stein Grabber. Whoa, on Instagram. I think I found the way in. So let's see if, yep, we did. Let me just get this over here and make sure there's no personal info. I don't think there is based on prior unboxings there. Pretty simple. But man, that was well packaged. So I have a pile of stuff sitting next to my desk in preparation for this. Now this particular knife came with a second scale. Pretty cool. Looks familiar. And a COA, which is very rare. Alex doesn't really do that anymore. I think he used to on his earlier ones. This is a Lamia Gen 4, and it is a very rare Baker Forged Damascus with a carbon fiber twill show scale. And the Damascus is the Baker Forged copper nickel Tsunami. They did, I think, 3, maybe 4. Oh my gosh, it's so nice and light with that carbon fiber. Oh, that. Wow. That is serious. Look at that milling. I'm sorry, I said milling. Look at that grind and that Damascus pattern. Little at loss for words there. Real nice D10 on that. Quite a bit stronger than my Gen 3. You know, everyone likes them differently. For a user, this is kind of my go-to. It's just so easy to manipulate and stuff that I really like it. That is, of course, an adjustable thing. I could go in and mess around with the lock bar a little bit, so I might do that if I decide that I want to, you know, use it a bit more or whatever. But man, that thing feels pretty darn good and might be one of the coolest Sanmai Damascus patterns I've seen. So I lost 6 auctions in a row. He did, I actually missed the first one. He did 7 auctions on Discord and 1 on Instagram for the finale. And I was bidding them up and they kept going over 3 grand on the Discord. And I just kind of would bow out to the person that was most interested or most desperate, or however you want to put it, in getting the knives. Look at that beauty. Really cool how this comes with the additional scale. If you want more of a, you know, standard look to it. We gotta measure and weigh this because this is gonna be, I think, pretty impressive on the weight here. With this carbon fiber scale, we'll use the old one, the V3. Again, I've had a lot of these, probably 10 of them or so. And this has been my favorite long-term for user and just all around feel in hand. 3.675 ounces there. Let's take a look. Holy smokes, 1 ounce less. Now I know the V4s have been a little less, closer to 3.3, 3.4 ounces, but that is 2.69 ounces. That's less than an Oz Roosevelt. 3.675, 2.69. It's almost a full ounce less. Very, very impressive. Anyway, I was saying there were 7 auctions that ran on Discord. I made it into kind of the final 3 on a few of those auctions. We'll also do a quick measurement because maybe you're just watching this for the first time and you haven't seen one of my other videos or another video on the SPK Lamia. These are made in New York. He does CNC and then does some hand grinding and that kind of stuff as well. 7.5 inch overall length, 3.3 on the blade length, and about 3 1/4 on the cutting edge. But Alex, to me, makes one of the best knives in the business right now. I just think it's, you know, from an ergo's perspective, the thumb hole design, the action, the aesthetic. I just think he makes one of the best true EDC knives. You can use these as pretty hard use knives as well. And he doesn't very often make a fancy version like this. This is very rare that he does this. I think he's done a Damax, however you pronounce that. I didn't see that. assured by or reviewed by Burt Reynolds. That's awesome. That was like the only Damascus I think that he had done. So to see like 8 knives come out San Mai, they're all on auction. They all went for between $3,500 and $2,500 and $3,500. Very cool. Again, if you're not in his Discord, that's where he sells most of them. So you want to get in there and check it out. Unless you're a scalper, in which case please stay away. But he did these Baker Forge raindrop and copper nickel tsunamis. I really liked the Tsunami. There was like one of the raindrop ones I liked, but some of the raindrops would have like a little bit of a Damascus pattern right on the edge and stuff, and that's not my thing. I really like a proper San Mai when it's a San Mai, and this is really cool. It's cool how this like kind of stayed up here because of the grind, and then where the grind hits, you get the San Mai pattern. Let's get a little zoom in for you here on this carbon fiber twill. So you got some speed holes there to make it super extra light. That's how he's able to drop a whole ounce versus the others. And I don't know if you can see it there, but there's actually, let's see if I can do a nice light showing here. There's our little Easter egg in there. Let me see if I can tell what it is. I think it's the woman. I think this version, the V4, has the woman in there. Each one of them would have like a little bit of a different Easter egg in there. I can't remember what this prior one was. Oh, the bear or something. I think it was like a honey badger or a bear or something like that in this one. So the V4 has the supermodel. Anyway, take a look at this. I'm giving you a nice close-up here. And I just couldn't win those auctions. So I was thinking the Instagram one being public was going to be even more competitive. Well, one of the top guys that kept going over 3,000 with me and a few other people ended up being in a meeting during the auction. So it came down to me and another guy that hadn't been in the Discord and probably didn't have all the intel about what they were selling for and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe he did. Maybe he was in there. I don't know, but I didn't know who the guy was, and it came down to me and him, and we were bidding it up from about 2,500. I don't know, maybe someone else got involved around 2,700, but from 2,800 and above, it was just me and this other guy, and it sold for just under 3,000. So I felt really good about that. 3 of them sold for under 3,000, and 5 of them sold for over 3,000, if I recall correctly. One guy bought 2, which is crazy. Big Lamia fan. But overall, I'm really impressed with it. I'm happy. Literally, the only 2 things I could criticize, and Alex said be gentle, but I know he doesn't really care that much about what reviewers think anyways, would be a little strong on the detent for me. Most people might actually like that. I'm just, see that, how hard it can be to deploy? Like you really have to get in there. It's fine on the reverse flick because your finger can get in a little deeper, but on the thumb hole, you have to really give it quite a bit of strength and kind of stay off the lock bar. And it's not as comfortable for rolling out. You have to really go deep into here. If you're up here, almost can't do it. You have to get a nice bit of leverage there for the rollout. Sorry, let me zoom back out here. And then the thumb hole isn't quite as knocked down because of the way that this gets finished. You know, this stonewash or whatever it was, bead blast, I can't remember what he did. It looks like a bit of a stonewash blast or something. On this one, always one of my favorites just because that's a little less sharp on the edge there. But this one's not terrible. I've felt much worse. But it's just a little bit sharp up there. Like that'd be like my one opportunity for improvement. But, you know, compared to many knives out there, gosh, what an awesome example. What would I compare it to? I've had a couple really nice knives kind of in this echelon. One of them would be the Oz Roosevelt Damascus. This would certainly be, you know, like one of my nicest knives in my collection, and a good comparable here for, you know, like a fancy version of a user that you could really put to work. These are both so cool. so different, but also kind of in the same size range and utility and everything. It's funny, on this particular one also, I'd say this Oz was a little sharper on here. So I think the way you have to finish a nice Damascus blade, you're not going to get knocked down quite as much as you can with like a stonewash blade, because both makers kind of have that same factor going on there. Again, this, this detent might work in and stuff, and then I won't notice the sharpness as much. So those two things kind of play off each other. You can see how strong that detent is there. And then I can also just take this apart and bend the lock bar a little bit to my liking, and we should be fine there. Overall, just super stoked on this. Looks like I might have loosened this just through tinkering with it a bit. So let's see, is that a, nope, he went big there. Looks like a T10. Oh, reaching, got it. Let me get this tighten back up here. I noticed it was a little off center, which is an indicator that this was loosened up, and I can just put some Loctite on there or whatever if I want. Yeah, that is just really nice. It's a little smoother because of the polish that he's got in here in the bearing area. That is just a beauty of a knife, man. Wow. Well, that did not disappoint. That was pretty much exactly what I was expecting and hoping for, spending that kind of money. And, I figured this is kind of how I factored it. You go buy this knife, you're spending what, $800, $850, something like that. I can't remember what they are for one milling versus another. I know with the Nature Grip, he charges a bit more due to the amount of time it takes to make that knife. You add in, based on Brown Knives and Oz and others, you add in like $500 to $750 for the one-off. These makers don't normally work with this material. So there's a very high cost of the billet itself because some Damascus maker had to make it. So they pay more for that. And then they got to go through a custom process to basically produce, the Damascus knife that they normally don't do. Right? He can do 100 of these in a batch. He did 8 of these. And it was like an ongoing project for months. I was watching it, right? So you add in 500, 750 at least, right? So now you're in the 1600 range. Then you add in the fact that he's got these 2 scales. This is a one-off scale he's never made before. Never done anything like this. At least $300 to $500 there. I'd call it 500 because he included the second scale. So it's not like he just gave you that scale. He's still giving you the original scale, which is probably a value of, at $200 itself, right? It's a titanium scale made in USA on CNC and custom finished and everything, or, like finished by a guy that owns the company, right? We're talking beyond mid-tech. We're talking, custom mid-tech, whatever you want to call it. CNC custom. So now you're at, call it 2100, 2200. Then you add in the rarity factor, the fact that only 8 of these are made and people just want them because they don't exist and shit, they look good in pictures and FOMO and all that stuff, right? Now you got another $500, $600 there. And then he did some custom hardware, I think through, I can't remember the guy's name, but you can find him on Instagram. It's mentioned in the Instagram post about this. It all adds up. So you're in the 2,500 minimum is kind of what I was expecting. I was hoping to be able to grab one of these on a first come first serve or something, and maybe hoping he would do like 2,200 would be pretty reasonable, like very reasonable price. But I was assuming it'd be more like at least 2,500. Well, the first auction went for 2,500, and they only went up from there once there was some validation from the community, and the highest one went for 3,500. So, that kind of speaks to, and most of them were over 3,000. I think 5 of the 8 auctions, if I recall correctly, at least 4, but maybe 5 of them went for over 3,000. So call it 4 or 5. It is what it is. Now there's a sort of validated price point. You can sell the knife if you want to. It's an investment. I wouldn't recommend it over putting your money in the S&P 500. But, when you have enough to do both, you end up with something like this. Cut. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.